Hi friends, this is Vema Reddy. In the last video, we have seen how we can create a process from Boomi side to integrate the Boomi flow. So these are the components we created. We created a Boomi process and we set up the Boomi Flow Service component and we deployed all these components. You can see like the two components. This component is it going to retrieve the process. It reads the XML file and then it's going to give you the JSON objects. So this we have seen in the last video. So this also we have deployed the flow components also here. So now let's take these things and then trying to install into a Boomi flow and let's see how does it will work. Now move on to the flow. You can just click on the flow here. So you'll be navigated to the flow. Once you navigate to the flow, let me just go to flow again. So this is how you will see, and after you running the flow, right? This is how you will see the data. So two components I use. One is a table component I used, and with the table component, the data that I retrieve from this process is going to display as a table here. And with this table also, I'll be able to make a search here. For example, if I want to search anything on, just search for R, you'll be able to search all this data. Okay, you can see like this. Okay, and also I can able to minimize this and able to see this information in a graphs. Okay, with the salary wise for department. Now let's see how we can create this things in flow. Okay, once you navigate to the flow here, what you will do here, you'll be end up with this screen. Okay, flow. But I have used already selected the tenant. In case if you want to change any tenant, you just go here and change tenant here. Then you'll be able to read. Once you navigate right, so you'll be landing up with this flow page. What you need to do is first thing we need to create a flow. Okay, in order to create a flow, what you need to do is you just need to click on flow and then give some name. Okay, I have already created a flow here. Okay, so once you create a flow, you can make the settings because you have an option to you want to fill the colors with the box or not. By default, it will be like this, and you can go and change these values in the canvas settings, and then you can see some fill colors also there. So this is a earlier Boomi standard one. So we just stick to that. So once you go here, right? So you'll see there are some set of components here, but we are just going to use the page component and the values component and then connector components. So the first thing what I wanted to do is I want to install the connector that I have created a process. So let's go to the connectors here first and then click on new connector and then select the Boomi integration service and then select the type of atom because I have installed a Singapore atom test cloud. So I just select it here. But in case if you want to use your own one, you can use other and then put it. Only the advantage of selecting from the drop down is it just generates a URL, base URL. And the path to service is the what you're supposed to give it here. And then once you configure and then select the authentication type. So once you select the authentication type, select the basic or client certificate. And I used base certificate basic one, just key in the username and password. This is very similar what you get from the shared web server settings. Once you click on this and then give some name here, in my case, what I given as an employee service over here. The reason because I is given as an employee code, I just given employee service. Once you click on retrieve connector configuration details, what it will show, it is going to show you um, how many what do we call this just click on this, what do we call, you can see I just entered this one and you can see here how many types are created with this one. Is types is basically kind of a profile. So like whatever the Boomi side, you create a profile that basically translate into a types here. So since we created one profile here, right? This profile is generates automatically as part of this. When you click on retrieve this thing, right? Like connector configuration, what it will do, it creates an employee object. So there are similar to the JSON here. You also have defines. Whenever you define types, right? You can just click on type. You can define here new property here. You can just define these many types you can do. By default, it creates only an object for this data actions, because get deals with one record, save deals with one record, delete deals with one record, that record of type here. Only the query is the component that deals with the multiple records. What it will do, if we create a multiple objects of that supports the list, right? What it will do, it create a one object, and that wherever you want, you need to use of type list. Whenever you select list, you need to type the object. So you can select. So then what you can do is it only creates a type. Okay, it only creates the type. If you want to create any of the subtypes that you want to derive from these types, you can create it. But as part of this connector installation process, it just only creates the employee component. Okay, once you go to the employee component, you see the structure, how it creates. Just go to employee component. You can see the same fields that we defined over here. It will be created over here. Okay, so once these things has been created, right? So now this is a component, or what we call type. This type, it's going to be, you can see that it's already have all the links, what connector ID and what connector name this came as part of it, and this is a type internal ID, and then you can see this type is being used by how many values. Okay, you can see value of type is here, and this one. Okay, which you can see the employee type and the values, and the query employees is the map element is the one you see. It's just showing you this dependency of this element. So once you install it done, you have basically one action we created. What is that action here? Is the action here is this one. Okay, employee is the action of query employee, and then one after that what it was created, one type is created. This is the type because when Boomi returns the data to the flow, what it need to do, it need to represent the data in some format. That's our format is of type is JSON. So that JSON structure is going to be like these values here. I'm going to show you this information. So once this types is available and connector is installed, and we just cross verify the types is should be installed automatically. Once this is there, then you navigate to the flow. I created my flow as this. So you can just click on here. If you want to change it, this property name I just mentioned as database query. Once a query is created, by default, the start component will be gets created. So now you have a lot of things available here. This is the one. Load component is the one I used. Load data from an external source. External source here would be a connector I installed here. That connector would be the source here. So I just configure this, the load one here, and then what it will do, you create a one data action. You create one data action here. When you click on one data action, what it will do, it just asks you to give some name. You just mention the data name, and then you just going to give, okay, I think it will be more visible now. So you just give the name here, and then you can just, this is like you have defined more than one actions. You, the way how you have data process, you want to define one more steps like that, you can define the order, otherwise you can just ignore it. And which value do you want to load the data into? Like once this step has connected to this service, and then load the data, and then where do you want to kept it? That's where you just store that values into a value of type. The values is kind of variables are, if you want to correlate it, this is a process property or document properties in integration. But there is by default those properties of type string value only. But here you can specify the list and objects also. So I created it here. You can see I created it an object here. string here, you can use create new value here. With this new value, I just created employee list and then I type select as a list here and then I selected the employee as here. So this makes me to create employee list. If I just give enter and just click on save, that I already created it. So once you click on done, just click on save and then what it will do, your action will be gets created. This is how it looks like. You can see I just written as query employees and then I just created action. Action name is called get employee list. So once you click on employee list, this is the name I given. This is what the value that you're supposed to store it. And once you're done, it automatically, the source will be automatically visible. This is the visible. It takes it from the connector that I installed it. If you have multiple, it just shows you get or anything, but it only shows one. But if you want to use edit filter, by default, it will be using no filter. When you use no filter, that's where the call comes to query. If you specify the filter, the call comes to get here. This is the only the place it controls whether it should call because the load is a component that is the one it have a ability to call the get or query. If you specify the filter here, then it will call the query here. Sorry, if you specify filter, it will call the get. If you don't specify the filter query or unique ID, and also if you see here, you can set a where condition. You want to specify only this is the only case it call comes to get. Otherwise, either this case or this case call goes to query operation. By default, I just took the default one. That's why I didn't took any filter. And with this configuration, my data action my load component is already configured. And after that, what you need to do, you just need to configure the one more thing called after this data is being written, this data is stored into a values. But I want to display this into a table format. So then what we want to do is we can use the page component here. And once you go to the page component, it asks you to define the page here. This is the same page, you can go and define it here. It's kind of a reusable source. The way how you have profiles, components like map, connector, connection, operations. Similar that page is also reusable component. Either you can create it from here or you can go here and create it. So just created here, click on plus, and then you can say some new page, but this view was not created properly, at least from my knowledge, like because it shows a lot of things here. It's not showing, that's why you just need to use minimize this, you just use to see all the values. You can see you have a containers here, how you want to design your web page. Because my web page, I want it to be designed like this. Okay, I have two sections. One section is it takes the table component here, another section is a graph component here. So this is where how you want to define. Now is containers means is basically kind of sections. You can see one section is here. This is one section. You can see I can minimize this section, and this is another section. I did not make this as minimizable one. Okay. So now what options we have to filter? So the page component is basically two purpose. You can define input sections. It will help you to take the input from the user and then fill it. For example, you want to take a feedback from the customer, or you want to take some kind of data you want to enter, you want to create a customer. It will show you the page, and in that you can fill it all the specifically. It looks like specific HTML page where you can key in all the fields and then. But in this case, I don't want to take any inputs. I don't want to do anything here. I want to use the table components, and you use minimize here. You can see there is a section called data. So this data you can see here, a table component here. Okay, you can see there is a table component here. So once you make it plus, you can say table component, you specify the name here and label here. The name is mandatory here. It internally uses this name. And label is the one you just define how you want to label it here, there and here. And then how does the table should, a table component basically tells you to display the content in a table format. But where is the data comes from? either you can call the data, because with this step we already have, with this step what we already have the data was queried and kept it into the list, so that you just use the get data from list because we already have a list, and select the list. After you select the list, what you can do, it allows you to define the columns. What are the columns that you want to display here? In my case, I display all these columns here. You can see ID, name, position, year of join, department, all these things. So I used plus columns here and then clicked on. Once I click on, the page component will be visible to you. But with this one, you can see how it looks like in mobile view, how it looks like preview in web view, both you can see. But I'm just not going to save anything. I'll just go and show you the component, the page layout, what I created it. Now you can see what by default when you create, you'll have a main container. This main container is kind of, you can broken down page into multiple sections. So we can see here the page what I did is I have defined two things here. You can see this is a one section and this is another section. This is the called chart. Okay. You can see once you go down here, there is one more thing called chart also here. Okay. This is the chart I used it. So once in this one, right? So what I created a row, it's kind of make you, row means basically this entire set of layout into a kind of rows. This is a one row. Maybe you can call these things as in HTML, you can create a one table, one div tag. This is a one div tag, another div tag like this. This is a one div tag. In this one div tag, I created two components called presentation. If you want to have anything, you define some kind of a header, a time, something like this, you can use a lot of components are there. You can format it how you want. All these things are there. What I did, I given some, selected some font, and then I put them paragraph header, and then I given the label like this. This you can do with presentation component. You can see here with this presentation component, I did all the presentation component how you want to here. But I just take a very simple thing. I just kept as presentation here, simple string with heading value, I kept it. Then I use the table component here. The table is the one because I selected this option as multi-seller, searchable, and then only search display columns. So I with this I checked all these check boxes because that's where the option you get an option to search it inside the table values, because if the table has 200 rows or something, you can search it for the required record. And then you can just, once you select this list, right, because we already created list earlier, once the list is there, you can just select the names here, because since I already selected a name here, it's not showing, because otherwise it will just show all the columns. For example, if I just create anything, right, it just shows you the names here, and then you can give the label name. Okay, for example, if I just want to delete, I add the salary column here. So you can see it says salary over here. Okay. So I'm not going to save any page here. Okay. You can see salary was here, and this is the actual name, and the labeled as ID is actual name I given. Once this thing is there, you can add some kind of, this is basically combined kind of CSS kind of stuff on the main container. This one, right? This rows, I made it in the properties attributes. You can just select can container collapsed. I mentioned as a true. That's where this option makes as collapsible here. Okay. Once now, on the way how you want to define page, I selected the another section that is called chart. I selected the chart. The chart, you can just give whatever the label you want and select the data set. What kind of chart you want to display. Okay. So I have selected similar because my data already there in the list. Okay, I just wanted to select what presentation you want to display here. So I selected the bar chart there. Okay, you can see here, I just click on here because by default, I selected the data set as a bar chart. Once I select the bar chart, you can see you can load it the data here with list. From the data you loaded the list, and then you just going to define what on the columns you want to define on the chart. I define department as a department, salary as a salary. So after everything is done, right? So you just go to back here and see how does it looks like in mobile view, how does it looks like in the web view. Okay. So once this thing is done, you just save it, and then once you save, you will be landed into. Once you save, you'll be landed into like this page. You just click on save so that the page will be saved and automatically populated because we navigated the plus new button here. Once this is there, then what it will do is you have to create the transition. These transitions will render as a buttons. Because by default, the start, whatever you connect from start, you can give a label what you want. You just double click on it, you'll get the name here. Okay. So, but anyway, you can just create label here. You just click on here and drag this one here. By default, this won't be rendered because this will be not a page component. It makes a service call. So whatever the service call output, it won't show anything table. But if you have any component, for example, if this might be a page component that takes some input, then what it will do, it show this as a button. Since this is not showing as a button because this component, previous component is action, so that it makes a service call, and then one service call makes it is no longer takes any input from the customer or decide. It doesn't have any path to go, right? So it's only one path. If you have multiple path, it shows you like which path each transition has a button. Since it has only one transition, it doesn't show anything. By default, it execute and displays it. Okay, now let's see how it runs. Just click on run. You can see it makes the call and then it loads the data from the process reporting. Now let's go to here process reporting and you can see if the data will be making here. You can see the call has happened. So Boomi side, it takes some time. You can see data has happened and it returned. Okay, it returned because it's just not showing this process, but it's returned the data. You can see the example of data, load data from table. This is the heading I kept. This is the presentation component. This is the presentation component. This is a table component. Since I made it as the root or row level, made it as a can collapse, I just see this button. And since the table I marked it as a searchable, you can see I can search it anything. Okay, I can search for, you can see multiple columns also I can select because I selected as a multi-select. Okay, and then I displayed another section as a bar section. You can see when you click on it, just shows two columns are selected. One is a department, one is the salary. So you can see department salary. So you can see you can design a nice page layouts the way how you want display and you take. There are a lot many features are there. I'll try to create as much as I'm also experimenting with this flow component as and when I can post a new videos. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you in this video. Thanks for watching this video. We'll come up with next video in future. Thank you.